Welcome to part 7 of English Settlement of the New World. Now we're going to talk about the English Civil War. During the English Civil War, we're going to have kind of a break in colonization. This is going to kind of occupy them. So you're not going to see a lot of colonizing during this time period, and you're not going to see any charters issued. Okay. The background on this has to do with the House of Stuart itself. Now, you remember Elizabeth I was the last of the Tudor queens, right? She died without any children, and there was the succession crisis that led to James VI of Scotland becoming James I of England, okay? Now, he's going to die in 1625, okay? He will be succeeded by his son, Charles. Charles will become Charles I. By the way, if we're talking about Stuart kings, it's Charles or James. Those are your only two name choices. And usually if we're talking about the Stuart women, we're talking Mary or Anne. That's it. Okay. So Charles I becomes king. He has a very unique ability. He is really good at pissing people off. All right. And he really doesn't like the fact that he has to go to Parliament for things like taxation and things like that. And so what does he do? He just disbands Parliament. So Parliament has been sent home, and he's going to operate without a Parliament for a decade, right? They're finally going to get fed up with this, right? And in 1642, Parliament is going to begin a civil war, a war against the king, okay? You're going to have two factions form. Royalists, those are going to be those who support the king. Most Royalists actually are Anglican Christians, right? Members of the Anglican Church as it is. And then you're going to have parliamentarians supporting the defunct Parliament, okay? And they are going to be predominantly Puritans, those who want to reform the Anglican Church. So in a way, this is also a religious war, okay? So the parliamentarians are going to form an army called the New Model Army. The king has his army that was already established, and you'd think he'd have the advantage, but ultimately he's going to lose. In 1646, he'll be defeated. After about 3 years of trying to negotiate and work with the king, now after he's been defeated by the parliamentarians, they realize we just can't work with this guy. And so they decide instead, we're going to put him on trial. We're going to charge him with high treason. And right away, that's going to cause questions. Because right away, somebody's going to, people are going to say, well, hold on a second, can we do that? Because high treason defined is crimes against the king. Can the king commit crimes against himself? Right? And so they're going to debate this. Can we actually charge him with this? Can a king actually commit a crime against himself? And what they decide is that, well, technically no, but what he did do was he violated the implied laws of the coronation, specifically the laws towards his subjects, and therefore we can try him for high treason based on those grounds. So in January 1649, he goes on trial. And on January 27th, he's sentenced to death. They're going to kill their king. Okay. So Charles I is sentenced to death, and England is about to go without a king. Okay. Charles was very careful about his appearance on the day of his execution. He wanted to make sure that he looked just right. Matter of fact, one of the quotes, he told one of the people preparing his hair that day, he said, "Though it has not long to stand on my shoulders, take all care you can with my head." Right? He wants to look fabulous. He asked what the weather was like outside, right? He said it's a little cold. He asked for an extra undershirt. He wanted to make sure not to be seen to shiver so that he wouldn't look like he was afraid. But on January 27th, 1649, Charles I is executed. The leader of the parliamentarians by this point, a talented commander named Oliver Cromwell, will take the reins of power. And England is going to run without a king until 1660. Cromwell's going to die, right? His son will inherit the title. At one point, they offered Cromwell the kingship. They said, "Do you want to be king?" He was like, "No, if I'm king, I have to answer the Parliament. I don't have to as Lord Protector of England," right? His son isn't very interested in running the government. And honestly, the English people were not very comfortable without a king during this entire hiatus from it. So in 1660, they contacted the son of Charles I, who was in exile. What's his name? Well, you only got two choices. It's Charles II. And said, "Would you come back and be king, please?" And he does. He comes back, and while he does spend some time enacting some revenge on those who had led to the death of his father, he's going to spend a lot of time rewarding those who had helped him get back into power. And one of the ways he would reward them is by giving them lands in the New World.